Hello and welcome everyone to episode 15 of Finding North. We actually breaking a little bit of our approach this year. We usually record an episode a week before and then launch it a week after. But with the events of last week, we decided to actually record today and publish straight away because the current topic that we want to discuss has some timeliness to it, and we don't know really where things will go next week. So we thought we're going to discuss it today. So Fahim, it has been quite a week. I almost feel like I haven't been able to really take a real breath this week with all the news around GameStop and the stock market. It has been all over the news. It started at the beginning of the week, with just in certain sort of niche news outlets, and then it even came to the big newspapers at the end, and even my parents talking about it. So we thought we're gonna just give a little bit of a chronological order of what has happened, maybe give a little bit of an explanation for some people who are not too familiar with terms like short selling, and then we're gonna go discuss how we feel about it, why it has happened, and where this might take financial markets and the stock market in the future. Cool.
Absolutely.
So for everyone who has been sort of living in sort of a box and hasn't heard the news, about a week ago, a subreddit called the Wall Street Bets has taken on large hedge fund short sellers. For anyone who doesn't know what a short seller is, a short seller essentially a hedge fund that buys a large amount of stock at a given price from an institutional investor at a certain price. So let's say they buy 100 shares at $10, and then they commit to selling back that exact amount to that institutional investor at some point in the future. The way they want to make money with that is they expect that the stock will fall. So if they buy the stock at $10 and immediately afterwards sell it at the market, they get $10 for it. And then they expect the share to drop down to, let's say, $5, so they can buy that exact amount of shares for $5 and then give it back to that institutional investor and basically make a profit on the difference. The problem with the whole approach is it can also go the other way around. If that stock now goes up to 15, the hedge fund, short-selling hedge fund, still owns that stock to the institutional investor. And if they pay 10 and now they need to buy it back for 15, they can essentially make massive losses. And this is exactly what has happened last week. So the approach of this Reddit subgroup was essentially they identified that some of the hedge funds, Melvin Capital, Citadel, and I think Point74, been holding massive short positions in the brick and mortar retailer for video games, GameStop, and they decided to organize and buy stock of that particular company, sending it up. I think initially it was like 13% on the first day, 57, then 27, and it eventually reached $468 per share on Thursday last week. Well, just to give like context, a year ago exactly on that day, the share price was $4. So crazy numbers that happened. In addition to that, our beloved friend Elon Musk, not actual friend, but friend, and we spoke about it in like two weeks ago,
Friend in spirit.
tweeted on Wednesday GameStonk and linking the subreddit. And as maybe some people know, Elon Musk has been very outspoken in the past what he thinks of short sellers. There's actually quite a lot of short sellers with positions in Tesla. So he sort of, he holds a crunch, I guess, against them. And then as a result, one of the short selling hedge funds in GameStop, Melvin Capital, actually had to close their GameStop position with hefty losses mid last week, almost sending them into bankruptcy. And two prominent other hedge funds, Citadel and Point72, had to give them a sort of, I think it was around $2.5 to $3 billion cash injection to throw them a lifeline so they can actually survive them from bankruptcy. And this is actually not where it ended. A very interesting thing then happened, mid last week, where a lot of these no-fee brokerage platforms that those amateur investors use, so those amateur investors that organize themselves on that Reddit group, in the US, that's, for example, an app called Robinhood. In the UK, many people use Trading 212. In Germany, it's an app called Trade Republic. They suddenly restricted the free trade of these stocks. So it was not just GameStop, but AMC Theaters, BlackBerry, Nokia, etc., only allowing to close positions, so selling stocks, but not allowing to buy positions. Creating demand. This has caused a massive outcry of those retail investors, essentially, considering this to be collusion between those apps and the hedge funds. I mean, this is this is not our opinion. It's just like some of the things that have been communicated. A lot of rumors going on, and rumors even had it that Citadel reloaded their short position just before the announcement that these brokerage apps would put a hold on the buying positions, putting additional fuel, loads of fuel in that fire that was already happening. So then by later this week, those apps announced that it was actually due to an unprecedented amount of trade volumes that they had to restrict those trades, because every time someone trades, they need to upfront a certain fee to that processing. I forgot about the name, and they said they ran into cash flow issues because because there was such unprecedented amount of trades happening. So obviously everyone can make their own opinion and decide whether they think that's believable, and that was the reason. There was also some server issues we and some of our friends experienced during last week. So Fahim, crazy week. I think everyone I spoke with who's a little bit in the topic, and even the real experts, on that, I feel we are we're seeing something that could potentially could be really like a tipping point that we saw last week. So just opening up, what's your view on the whole thing? How have you experienced that crazy week last week?
Yeah, no, very nicely put. You gave a very, very nice summary and the scene setting of that. It has been a very crazy week with nearly all of the news outlets picking this up and it becoming a massive, I think, started off with a financial debate, but now it's a societal debate around, equal footing for everybody. Personally, for me, I'm always a massive, I get a lot of, I'm excited about what this change could bring,
Yeah.
We should never be afraid of change. Change is the only constant. And usually we will definitely look back at this moment of time around how this whole 100, 200-year financial institution of the investing part of the financial segment has been operating. And boy, oh boy, where they were caught unguarded. They just didn't know what hit them. They needed that time to pause the market on those shares, to regroup, and come up with another plan. So I think that's a very healthy thing, healthy competition. A true free market nurtures a great innovation and great paves the way forward. So a couple of points on that. I mean, I would love your opinion as well, but this whole notion of short selling, first of all, like question mark around, is this ethical? How can you make money if a company goes down? I know technically speaking, you know, um, the short selling mechanism, like you've described it, you make a contract to borrow shares, so that you can give them back at the same price, but then you sell them, at a lower price, and then you pocket the difference. So the financial technicality of it, I get. Like, okay, well, you agreed that, and the other person was hoping it would go the other way around, right?
Yeah.
But it just, for me personally, it doesn't sit right that you can profit off a company that doesn't do well. That's number one. Secondly, if I'm not mistaken, GameStop was shorted at like 140%. So they were shorted more than the value of the company itself. So I think that, to me, where you're kind of creating wealth out of thin air, out of nothing, out of some mechanics and things like this, that's a big question mark for me. So the whole notion of short selling as a vehicle for wealth building, and I think it's been a convenient mechanic that's been put in place to squeeze whatever's out there. And I think, I don't know, what's your feeling on the whole short selling thing?
So I think the short selling thing for me has two considerations, and you already pointed out. It's the ethical one, and it's also like how short selling can actually be used to, in my opinion, manipulate markets when it comes from a certain group or in part of the overall ecosystem, investment ecosystem. So the ethical part, I just don't understand why people would bet against companies, and it just, for me, doesn't feel right. It's not investing for me; it's betting. It's like it's almost casino type of thing.
Should belong to the casino.
Yeah, and it's also from an ethical point of view. Yeah, on the stock market, you only see that as like an instrument, but behind every organization, there's people behind it, right? There's jobs attached to it, like to personal histories and so on. So betting against the company, and actually, this is not just betting; it can have a real impact, because if that short selling actually can move the market, those companies can go bankrupt. So it's not just that someone makes money, it's also someone significant lose money, and it's the people usually at the bottom of the food chain, people who work in those markets and so in those companies, losing their jobs. So there's a real life impact on that as well. And that brings me to the second one, is the sort of like how you can manipulate the markets, because if you represent billions and billions of dollars of investors, and you short sell a stock, you can use that either as an instrument to deliberately put a company out of market, because you might hold a long position in a competitor. And in that long position, okay, if that competitor goes out, so I'm short selling it because I'm trying to squeeze it out of the market, my long position is going to benefit. So I think this is possible. And the second thing, those hedge funds sometimes also have maybe an interest. Well, if that goes down, maybe I can then buy the stock at 10 cents on the dollar, and do sort of a restructuring, or then break the company up and sell the individual parts at a higher price. And that is also something that, again, is not ethical. It's sort of market manipulation, and therefore the whole concept of short selling is something that when I got into investing, I said, like, I will never do. I will always only buy stocks with the intention to hold it, not trying to bet against the company, because it's not something that I think is the right thing to do. The other thing that I know, however, it is also a legitimate financial instrument that some of those large companies do to actually hedge their risk. So if they have a very long position that is leveraged, sometimes they buy short positions in case that long position doesn't go through. So, it doesn't grow by 100%, and they're leveraged on that. They can actually cut their losses if they also have a short position in that, because in case the stock falls, they at least make then some profits with the short position. So it's a complex topic. We both obviously don't work in the financial markets. We only dabble in it here and there in our personal life. But I think there's many of people like us out there, so I think it's still going to be of value to them. But yeah, that's sort of just my opinion on the short selling.
Yeah, no, so totally aligned on that. And I think at the end of the day, the rules of the stock market and investment are clear, right? So you're right. These rules can be used to hedge your long-term positions, or you could purely use it as a strategy to saying that's just how I'm going to make money. You know, so that's fair. I think what didn't sit well with me was a community that got together saying, hey, look, we're going to use the mechanics of what's available there and play the game on equal footing.
Exactly.
And they got penalized for that. And I think what I particularly didn't like is that some of these brokerage firms coming up saying we did it to protect the customers or the amateurs, right? And also even the amateur investors. I think even that term doesn't sit well with me, because I think we're underestimating how innovative and
there's a lot of like very smart people. Like
very smart people there. And even then, you may argue that maybe a percentage of the Reddit group were just jumping on the bandwagon, right? Which is fair.
Yeah.
But that in itself is what's called momentum investing. There is value investing. But there is, the day traders and I don't know, week traders. They tend to use momentum investing. They don't even care about the fundamentals, the way Warren Buffett would describe around value investing. All they care about is where are the swings. Jump on the swing, get out, cut your losses, make a profit.
100%.
So this was just momentum investing is what professionals do, and they trade
all the time.
Just because now another community has done it, it feels like, oh, we got to stop. So I think that to me is where the institutions are massively underestimating and just putting them in a box of, oh, these are just kids. And they don't help themselves by calling themselves YOLO money, where they take money out. But at the end of the day, when you create those apps on those brokerage firms, you need to go through that they warn you that stocks can go up and down, you can lose your money, etc. So there's enough guidance.
Why can they now suddenly decide that they need to protect you from making bad decisions, right? Who are they to take that decision? I'm completely with you. And I think on the hedge funds, I think no one likes humiliation. And that's exactly what has happened. I think that's why they're reacting like this, saying because they basically it's the power of the internet that has humiliated large hedge fund investors. That's sort of for me the synopsis of what has happened last week. And it's I read this, like one CNN anchor, Christine Romans, has put it like, I'll just read the quote. She said, like, a populist uprising armed with no fee brokerage accounts instead of pitchforks. That's what exactly has happened. And this is like, why would those instruments, of trading only be why can only professional traders use them in order to make money? It's like, and this is what has happened for decades and decades. It's like only the professional investors, the traders, have used those mechanisms in the market to drive stocks up and down, and use the momentum to make some short-term gains from it. And now it's basically on using the internet to organize themselves to do exactly that, and take on, pool money together, buy a stock, sending it up, knowing that some other players in the market hold a short position against it, and compete with them. So I think that one,
no
for
doubt.
me,
Yeah, go on. Sorry, go on.
No, it's like that for me is the key part here, is because for the first time. And you know, you might ask yourself, why has this not happened earlier? Because the internet has been around for a long time, right? And you know, organizing and pooling power together has been used in the past, whether it was the Arab Spring uprising, you know, and other occasions. Why has it not happened earlier to build a community that takes on now the financial markets? And it sort of puts, you know, uh, it levels the playing field, because as maybe some people know, in order to get into hedge funds, you need to usually put in a minimum of 500,000 to 1 million in assets to even be allowed to get into a hedge fund, to have access to those professional people, right? So the access to those is limited to already a small number of very wealthy individuals, you know? So it's that whole notion of like, you know, well, it's restricted to the already wealthy becoming even more wealthy. Why would not now the, you know, the amateur investors, the retail investors, find a vehicle through the internet to also organize themselves and pool some power together to, you know, to compete with those. And I think that's the very interesting thing that is happening here. What's your view on that?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna. You've actually said the point already. I was gonna talk about. We've always talked about the power of a community. You know, when people come together,
Yeah.
great things happen. You know, and yes, maybe on this case, it's the David and Goliath type of thing. But just imagine what a community can do if we, you know, if you think around you know, sustainability and all those, you know, world hunger, peace, world peace, and all this sort of stuff. So anyways, that clicked a thought in my mind around the power of a community, and we're seeing so many examples of this in terms of what the internet can facilitate, you know. But coming back to our main topic, I think the other area that I was unhappy about, and I had very reserved feelings about, is obviously they had stopped these platforms. And by the way, I know we say it's zero fee, but at the end of the day, it's zero fee, but they make the money on the spread. Okay, so it's like, you know,
sort of,
they're not doing
sort of
charity work for, so
it's
they're
with
not doing
everything we
charity
discussed
work
it
by
last
any
week, right?
means.
Nothing is free. So like
Nothing is free, right? Somehow somebody's making the data, and they probably sell the data on to research and insights. So I park that. But I think the area that that the point is like I think many of us experienced that we couldn't log on to these platforms, which sometimes are hard to believe that a surge in users trying to access. Come on, like those days, scaling your platform, though you can't be using that excuse any longer.
Exactly.
But I think, and when they did come on, I think the blatant market manipulation is when they said you can sell your positions, but you can't buy.
Yeah.
So when you can sell a position, the only way the only way the stock will go is down, because people will sell. This is how a market is made. The number of buyers, the number of sellers. If you got more sellers and they can only sell, guess what's going to happen? So this was, forget about what the hedge funds are doing behind the scenes and pumping and dumping and whatnot, etc. But if you only allow to sell, that's it. That's market manipulation, crystal clear.
Yeah.
You know, people need to really be accountable. I know the other mechanic of this. I know some of the these retail brokerage firms came out to explain what was going on, and some did a good job, but some did a terrible job at explaining all of this, right? From what I understand, and it could be an element of this that we should debate, is that when you trade, there is the trading date, and then a couple of days later, the settlement date, where the actual money gets exchanged. And then there is these clearing houses that actually then do the actual money transaction, and they charge a certain fee, and it takes a couple of days to do. Now, those clearing firms require collateral because they feel that maybe the other party may, because of the sustained losses, they may go bankrupt and then they don't have nowhere to go to. So they were, for those particular stocks and trades, usually those clearing houses would ask for 2 to 3% of the amount as collateral, yeah, which is fair. That's the going rate at the time, right?
Yeah.
But for these particular trades, they were asking for 100% collateral, meaning that these brokerage had to put up billions and billions in a deposit in case the trade. But I would say that yes, during this past week there was a frenzy of activity, but surely though that market trades only still represents a very small amount of the total pie, right? Like so
one stock,
I think it's one or two stocks. Yes, it's going up and down, and plus at the end of the day, I may be wrong in this, but it could be very likely that the transaction is going between one brokerage firm within itself. So you probably don't even need to go into a possible clearinghouse, but I could be wrong in that. So yeah, the sell only didn't sit right with me at all. Because you know what, if you needed time to clear the thing, then you know what, just stop all trading activity, let it clear, and then bring it. But to only allow to sell your position, that the stock can only go down. And like you said, many of the hedge funds, well, we're speculating here, they knew that this would happen, so they shorted the stock during that period because they knew it will automatically go down.
It's interesting one, right? The other one that also sort of that just happened before that, when Melvin had to then sell their short position, then what happens is this concept of a short squeeze that elevates the stock even further up, right? Because suddenly they have to they have to buy that stock at that price to clear their short position, so which puts more buyers into the market and suddenly sending the price even further up. And if you can then time that moment right, where it's just been, the short squeeze just happened, plus then those brokerage firms say you can't buy anymore, you can just sell, and then you at that point you put a short position in.
That's it.
Let's leave it at that.
It's guaranteed. it's a guaranteed way to
So for me, to the interesting thing for me is like what I'm wondering, if there's actually now ways to predict those, where the Reddit army moves next, and whether some of the professional investors, because they're not stupid people at all, right? And they're
going to be in those forums.
Yes, they will be in those forums. They, maybe they're already in there, and maybe some of the people who, who knows, and whether you can actually predict where the Reddit army moves next, which stock they would pick up next. So you can actually anticipate that, buy a long position in that, just before they come in to send the stock price up. And then when you reach the, because at one point, let's be clear here. I know, like, GameStop is not worth $468 a share. I'm sorry, right? Like, it was $4 last year. There's a reason. Yes, they hired some new people. One guy that sort of has a tech background that's supposed to come in and help with like the whole digital transformation topic and bring them to the internet and all that. But like, not from $4 a share to like 468. It's not worth it, that, right? I still don't
that individual probably feels he's achieved his target.
And there's a lot of people who made a lot of money in that who work for GameStop, by the way. They suddenly became like billionaires or multi-billionaires.
But do you know what's funny as well? When this thing happened to Nokia actually came out with a statement to say, hey, look, we know that our share price has doubled, but our business has not significantly changed in this period, right?
Yeah.
GameStop has been silent throughout this whole period. good on them. You know what? Good on them.
I like that. Yeah.
Let them liquidate some of their shares and maybe reinvent themselves, you know, because they are the blockbuster of the gaming bricks
For
and
me,
mortar thing. So
so
maybe
that
this is their lifeline.
for me that brings like that meme in, you know, that Michael Jackson Thriller meme where he just sits in the cinema and he eats his popcorn. I think that's him. That's how I
Yeah,
imagine like the GameStop executive sitting there at the moment. It's just like let's just observe. So I want to pick up one topic with you because you know, this is sort of our topic at heart. Sort of our red line through all of this is like, you know, the internet, technology, disruption, innovation, how it's impacting people's life. And I want to get your view on that. Of, you know, is that just another proof point that the internet will come, eventually will come for everyone and everything? Every industry, every sort of, you know, political movement, you know, government, institutions, and so on. At one point, the internet will flatten hierarchies, decentralize, democratize, you know, build communities, level the playing field, return power to the people. And now it's just time that this happens to the financial markets as they've been for, you know, decades and decades and decades, and be really potentially seeing something that is, you know, the tipping point, that through more of those organized groups, amateur, I'm using those terms like just to you know, on purpose, just to make
yeah,
a
of
clear
course.
differentiation, like amateur investors, retail investors organize themselves and, you know, maybe build the community hedge fund of the future. And there will be more of those, where people just on Reddit groups or other groups organize themselves, pool um, their money, similar to what hedge funds do of wealthy individuals, you know, where then a hedge fund manager just represents a bunch of very wealthy people, and they try to make markets, you know, send stocks up and down.
Mm,
What's your view of sort of the long term in internet? And you know, is this,
yeah.
is Reddit, Reddit is, you know, is Reddit just a feature of the internet that now helps to facilitate it, or is it potentially a bug of the internet that we see something that is potentially very a real threat to also, you know, the economy at large, because it's market
Mm,
manipulation, and stocks that actually don't have any fundamentals will be traded and put
yeah.
to crazy highs.
Yeah, I think I know it feels like, because you know, we've been growing up with technology and the internet, right? I think humanity is only discovering the the vast potential opportunity what
Mm,
the internet, and when we say the internet, it's really bringing people together and connectivity together, right?
yeah.
I think we're just at such early stages of seeing the power of it. And what we've seen in the past decade or so is all these different experiments, you know. I would like my optimistic self says, look, I would love for all of this great potential to be used for a far greater good, you
Mm,
know, than just market building. Because in terms of when it comes to the stock market or the market building, unfortunately, there has to be winners and losers.
mm,
So when you pump something up, you know, someone's going to be left holding the expensive, worthless thing, right?
thing,
And
yeah.
you get caught out there, right? But I think we're at the early stages of just discovering what
Mm,
this could do. So I'm just thinking out loud at the moment. Imagine there is a very purposeful startup company tries to do something very good for the planet, for humanity, right?
mm,
But you know what? They're missing out on some scientific engineering muscle. Imagine a Reddit community says, you know what, we're going to help these guys
yeah.
launch their product, launch their service. And you know what? They're not going
Mm,
to give them money. They're going to give
mm,
them intellect, you
yeah.
know, and
Yeah.
they're going to, you know, and you know
Analysis,
what,
like,
that's
yeah.
a analysis. And I think that uh, uh, I think what internet gives you is allows you to quickly mobilize
Yeah.
um, a part of society with skill, knowledge, and just channel it through. And
Yeah.
you just see acceleration of massive innovation. And I think that would be, imagine how cool that would be if that Reddit army says, you know what, we're going to help solve
Mm,
malaria
mm,
problem, or we're going to help come up with a new algorithm on how to provide clean water or sanitation and whatever it may be, right? So I think what we're seeing now with the the traditional financial institution and the amateur retail army fighting with their plastic forks, right,
yeah.
is I think it is a little bit of a dance at the moment, right? Because it's accessible to everybody, right? What I worry about is that there's a long tail of folks who will think now, well, whatever that Wall Street bet says will just go up, and
I think
they'll start to.
that is already there,
That's
because
already.
that group has grown, I think, from 2 million at the end of the previous week to, I think, almost 6 million by now. So imagine, right? And this group has been around since 2012. So it took that group 9 years to grow to 2 million, and then like a week to triple in size in just a week. And I think this is where I'd like to pick up on that first thing you said there, is like the power of community to actually do something good. Because I believe that it's a perception, right? I don't, again, I have no facts for that, but I feel like some of those people in this group who started this initially did it with a purpose. And the purpose was, and a belief. It was not just to make money, it was a core
Yeah,
belief that they just don't like the concept of short selling. And they also, I
yeah,
think then there's also this thing of nostalgia maybe with those particular brands that they've been picking up and backing, right? GameStop is like people, video gamers, I think the cohort of
yeah,
people on
yeah,
Reddit, it fits, people would like to go into those shops and buy new video games and like borrow it and resell and so on. AMC theaters, people like movies. BlackBerry, there was like a massive like fan, like what are now Apple boys, are used to be the BlackBerry, fanboys, and it, so it was around the purpose. Now your long tail, I think a lot of people now jumped on this thing to make money with it, and think they can get
yeah,
rich quickly, and this is where the tricky part comes. But on your first idea, grouping people to solve grouping people around a purpose, around something like that could be anything, as you said, like a green energy startup that just doesn't have the capital, human capital or financial capital,
yeah, yeah,
organizes a group and they just help it analysis and research and maybe funding. Yeah, that one I would completely buy, and I think that is probably something that might come out of this. It would, I mean, we would all probably like to see something like good come out of this, rather than just like sticking it to the hedge fund boys, which is also
yeah.
kind of fun to watch in my opinion. But so no, that's a very interesting one. It's a
Yeah.
very
I think
positive outlook.
yeah, I hope so. I think we're only discovering the power of technology, and we're just even now just dabbling into it. With such power, unfortunately, it can be used for good and bad,
Yeah,
and we have all those actors. Um, but I think this whole back in a particular stock where even the fundamentals don't make sense at the moment, it's a little bit of a tongue in cheek, a bit of fun, poking. It's a bit of a fight going on, but I don't see the future of investing being maybe something like that, because I think
mm,
then you'll get insiders within those groups as well, and then like people be held, holding lead at
and
the end of
and
the day.
and and you
But
get
yeah,
and you get also get groups that don't get around positive intent and purpose, because this one here, you could argue, it has a positive intent and purpose behind
It's,
it.
it had a pure form,
Pure
yeah,
form.
to
People could
it.
do
Yeah.
exactly the opposite, right? They could actually crash companies that actually perform well just because they pool so much capital in one of those Reddit groups, and like destroy. I don't know. I don't
I
want to
don't
say
know.
Facebook.
They could do that. Yeah.
But like,
No, they definitely could. Yeah.
they could. They definitely could.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be. I think it's hard to see yet what the long-term consequences of that particular thing occasion is gonna be. I think there's definitely. It's not going to go away. The SEC or the BaFin. I don't know what what's the one in the UK. What are they called? The people oversee
The financial FSA financial
something like that. Yeah.
yeah.
I think they will step in and they will look at this. They will. I think they will either maybe look at short selling. The whole concept, and maybe put some further regulations around that. Maybe they will just, maybe the hedge fund lobbyists in Washington going to be strong enough that they're just going to ban those Reddit groups, or they try to go after them, that they somehow when
They're going to ban. So somebody said they were going to, the SEC is going to ban outsider trading.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. Yeah. Only if you're part of those few insiders, then you're allowed to trade. No, very good.
Exactly,
I mean, that could be a potential one. I think the rise of a new type of hedge fund could be interesting, like a crowdsourced hedge fund.
Yeah, people,
distributed maybe over some sort of that's when we go into like blockchain and crypto. I mean, that's and very, very interesting for me. And I think we probably gonna end with this topic, and we're not gonna open a crypto conversation now. But I sent you that article yesterday that India is considering banning cryptocurrencies, private cryptocurrencies, and that made me think. And it's similar to what's going on. I think here is, at the end of the day, people who control money control the world at the moment, right? Because money still means power. And that's why it's going to be, I think, interesting to see how regulators and governments going to react to, first of all, this, right? Because it's like people take back power, it's more distributed by having more control over money and the financial market. And the same happens with cryptocurrency. It's probably the biggest threat to sort of like institutions and governments as we know it, because it just like democratizes money and like how it flows and how it can be controlled. So I think we live in very interesting times, and today is the 31st of January. We've just seen some rioters break into the Capitol. We've seen amateur investors taking on hedge funds. We've seen a new president in the United States. We see a massive vaccination program rolling out worldwide, combating the biggest pandemic or crisis since the Second World War, all in January, while we all sit at home and we just can watch the news. I mean, it's some crazy times we live in. And
absolutely. If this is January, what's the rest of the year is going to look like? So let's put our seatbelts on.
For sure. I mean, it's good for us because people, like us who like to do a podcast talking and discussing, this is going to be great because we have always almost too much content. But it's also at times emotionally draining, and you can get a little bit overwhelmed when you look at all the things that are happening at the moment. Change is good, but not everything at once while we're all stuck at home and have no balance in our life whatsoever. Cool. Anything else, or shall we
No, I think let's wrap up. It was a timely topic to talk about, especially with everything that's going on. So I think we wanted to do that. So
cool.
Maybe why don't you sign us off?
Sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks, guys, for listening and watching. As always, please subscribe or like and comment if you listen to us or watch us on YouTube. If you're on Spotify, please download the podcast. That's super helpful. As always, tell your friends about it, repost it, retweet it. Comment on LinkedIn if you have thoughts around this. I'm pretty sure you do, so don't be shy. We will be here next week for sure with another episode. 2 more great news next week. Have a good one. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.
Peace. See ya.